Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Investor Financing Podcast. On today's show, we're going to kind of go outside the box and we're going to talk about probably the most important thing for any business owner, any real estate investor, any mortgage broker, and it's all about communication, how to effectively communicate. And I often stutter and say but it's it's a skill that you continually learn and adapt, and it's actually an art, and so you have to practice. And I would say that the practice I've done is I've just gone on and just tried to present myself, where there's an actual art to this, where you can actually become a black belt in communication. And right now I might be a blue belt because I've just at least put myself out there and I'm communicating. But communication is the key for anything. When we're negotiating to buy an investment property, when we're negotiating or talking to investors that we want them to invest hundreds of millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars into a deal. It all comes down to communication. And the more you can present yourself in the right possible way, and body language and building rapport and eye contact, all these things. And these are things I don't know. I need to study. And so I wanted to bring on a guest today that actually on his website, which I was most impressed about him, I didn't tell you this, that Dolph Lundgren, who I'm a huge fan of. And if you guys don't know who Dolph Lundgren is he's like the number one action movie guy out there. I mean, he's just incredible. He was in the Rocky movie, and he's the big blonde hair guy. And he's in his, he's getting old now too. And he still looks great.
He does.
Yeah. So please welcome John to the show. John is an in-demand author, executive coach, and trainer. And after blowing his first chance on the TED stage, he is now one of the most prolific TED format coaches in the world. He trains people from high-level corporate executives to U.S. Navy Special Operations, Boston Scientific. He's got a lot of experience. And when his testimonial from Dolph was amazing on his website, I was like, oh my God, Dolph Lundgren. That was just, my heart was beating, because Dolph is just an amazing person. I don't know much about his backstory, just what I know of him. He's just phenomenal. So John, welcome to the show. We really appreciate having you here.
Thank you, Beau. It's great to be here. And I do have to say, I saw the Rocky movie when it came out. I'm that old. And I've watched a bunch of his other stuff, like the Expendables and, just all. And when I got a chance to work with him, oh my gosh, I had no idea. The guy is brilliant. He's not just a big, good-looking lunkhead. He's like a big, good-looking, super brilliant dude. And if you haven't watched the talk that he gave, that TEDx talk, it will make you weep. It is so amazing. That was one of the highlights of my career. I like that, and training the astronauts are the two things that I think are probably, and special operations was pretty cool too.
Yeah, I love your mission statement, and your mission is to bring out what is awesome inside you, so you can have the impact you want to have on the world. And I think that resonates with me, right? Like, we all have awesomeness inside of us, and some of us never let it out, right? And I think it's our duty as human beings on this planet to let your awesomeness out. And I loved what you wrote there. I love that. That was so awesome. So let's kind of wind back. You were in the .com era. You were in the the San Francisco Bay Area. You were raising millions of dollars at the time. How did you transition into becoming an executive leadership and communication specialist? Where did this all happen?
Well, I wish I could say I did it on purpose, but the transition was, I just failed at everything else, right? We had we'd raised over $80 million in the .com days, and then the market changed and our investors came to us and they said, all right, you guys have done a good job doing what you're doing, but we don't think that you're going to be profitable fast enough, so we're pulling the plug now. And I went into a corner and cried and almost died of an autoimmune disease. I was so stressed, and I was so ashamed and upset and angry and hurt, and just every bad emotion that human beings can feel, pretty much. And I just thought I was going to be a loser forever, and I was never going to be okay. And and I was not okay for a while. Like, it was a really serious autoimmune disease that almost killed me a few times. And it seems to be related to lack of sleep and stress. And then I just really couldn't find my groove for quite a while. And everything that, even the small little things that I was doing, just dried up and went away. And so I spent a couple months really wondering what I was going to do, Beau. I mean, for a while I thought, gosh, maybe I'm just going to be a barista for the rest of my life or something, which is, I mean, if that's what you want to do, great, but that was not what I wanted to do. And I looked back over my life and tried to figure out what I had. And at first I thought I had nothing, because I'd always been an entrepreneur. So I'd always done everything, but I'd never specialized in anything. And then I realized, well, I've been a public speaker basically for my whole life. I was always the evangelist, didn't really get the value of that. I thought I worked with a bunch of hard people and they all thought what I did was fluffy. So I kind of bought into that and I didn't really get the value of it. And then in the midst of all of that, I managed to get to TED, right? I put it on a credit card. I was already so far in debt, it didn't matter, right? So, and at TED, I had two big realizations. One is the power of public speaking. It is really important. And I didn't really get it till I was there. And then I had another realization that I think is probably to my credit a little bit. I realized that even though I had been a public speaker essentially my whole life, I had never been doing what I saw at TED, right? That caliber of speaking was just beyond what I'd been doing. And so I came back, got really involved in the TED and TEDx community, was volunteering for some friends who were running TEDx Santa Monica, because it's an all volunteer effort. And we had a guy that day that was the one I was waiting for all day. And he had all the hard skills in the world, the most interesting topic. But when he got up on stage that day and started to speak, everybody in the room checked out because he was so nervous and awkward. We all thought we were going to throw up. And it was so sad. And I remember sitting there just being really sad for a while because I'd seen that too often. People who had so much to offer that just couldn't quite communicate. And that's where my why comes from, right? That you talked about. Because I sat there and I was so sad. And then I have to admit the evil part of me popped out. And I remember sitting there going quietly to myself, hard skills guy is blowing it. Nina calls what I do fluffy, right? And as I was doing that, my buddy came over and totally changed my life. He leaned down and he said, dude, we got to do something to help people like this. And I remember it was like, gee, I could have had a V8. The clouds parted, the angels sang, the lights came on, lightning struck. I was just like, why? If I just get over myself for 5 freaking minutes and ditch this stupid chip on my shoulder, I could make a difference for someone like that. So I went home, and that's when things changed. And I started to create the training I now do all over the world, right? We talked about my clients. I pinch myself. I can barely believe that that's true. But it's because of that moment. Because what I did differently is I based everything I did in human evolutionary biology and human neurophysiology, in other words, the science of communication, so I could show people not only what works, but also why it works based in science. And that just totally changed everything. Sorry, kind of a long story, but
that's great. I mean, it sounds like you kind of hit a bottom.
I hit bottom.
You were on the bottom. You hit bottom. And I think I love hearing people be transparent, because not everything you do in life, like you might look around, people go on social media and they're always seeing everybody's highs, and or they're faking it, and it's like it's portraying the wrong thing, because honestly, we all struggle with something. A lot of stuff. Some of us hit rock bottom, which is worse than anybody could imagine. I mean, you were so stressed you were sick. I mean, that's no way to live.
I almost died. Dude, I feel like I didn't hit rock bottom and bounce. I feel like I hit rock bottom and dragged along the bottom for a really long time,
But it was interesting. As soon as you found your purpose and your why, it probably was like you went from like this bottom, like where you were like there for a while, and
Yep.
then you just, you know,
Well, and it's interesting because what I realized is that that whole period, I had heard my whole life, Beau, provide value, right? That's how you're going to succeed. Just find something that really provides value. And it wasn't like I was thinking that, but I was looking for what do I have that I could do, right? And when I discovered public speaking and coaching people and executive coaching, and I started to do it, that really was the thing I had that provides value. And I had to believe in myself because for the first year, I went further in debt. The second year, I kind of broke even. The third year, I made more than I ever made in my whole life ever before. And then I doubled that plus, then I tripled that plus. Like, so all of a sudden it took off, but not all of a sudden really, right? Because it was a year of going further in debt, a year of just kind of breaking even. And I think that's why people say do what you love, because that's the only thing you're going to do long enough to succeed, right? It's easy to be an overnight success when you've been doing something for 10 years.
yeah. Oh my God, it's so true. And I think people need to understand that, because I see some people go through life and they kind of give up and they never like take any chances or risks. Like something in the back of your mind, you were like, oh, I'm going to go and swipe the card to go to this TED event, and it's going to cost me.
Dude, I was terrified.
Yeah. But you have to believe in yourself in order to make these huge strides, because at that point in your life, you're at your like probably one of your all-time lows, and you weren't a spring chicken either. I mean, it was 2010ish, 9.
Yeah.
When this happened. So,
yes. Yeah.
So,
I went to TED for the first time in 2009. So that was
13 years ago.
Yeah. Yep.
So, but it's just
I was
amazing.
in my 40s. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think a lot of people struggle. A lot of people they accept like defeat almost. And it's like, why are you accepting defeat? I mean, Colonel Sanders, Kentucky Fried Chicken, I think he was in his 60s was when he started KFC. I mean, like a lot of people in their 40s would just say, okay, I'm going to go take my 9 to 5. I'm a loser. I'm going to just work this job and be done with it. Like where you would have been so unfulfilled with your life if this would have never happened, right? Like just what happened. So, okay, so now your business is doing well. You're starting to help like bigger and bigger companies. And we kind of break out like what you do, like that you're different. Like I know you do one-on-one coaching with like the Dolph Lundgrens of the world, where you're getting them ready for a huge TED Talk. And I think Dolph's TED Talk was on like how he had a really hard childhood, right? Like
yes.
And like what he overcame. And I like what he wrote, because he even said that the police officer and the LAPD stopped him and said, hey, I love your movies, but when I heard your TED Talk, that was the best thing I've ever seen. So that was like pretty strong testimonial right there.
Yeah.
But so can you kind of break down like who your avatars are? I mean, it's obviously like high level executives, but you do like the normal Joe Schmo type of people that are up and comings. Who do you work with?
Well, so I've got a few different layers, and I'm still working out my business, right? Like I'm just getting to the point where it's starting to be an issue that I'm not scalable. So I'm working on how do I get this out on multiple levels. But my number one offering, yes, is one-on-one executive leadership communications training. And that can be anything from someone who has a really important, that's how I usually first meet people, is they've got a really important talk. They want to make it TED worthy. They get the value that it is going to be to put some time and effort in on this, and they come work with me. And then they'll bring me back to train their whole department, right? Because they're like, whoa, we need this everywhere, right? And then I'll come in and I'll train their whole department or their team in the fundamental principles of leadership communications based in the science of communication, neurobiology, evolutionary biology. And it makes it so much easier for people to be excellent communicators, because everything I share with people is super obvious in hindsight.
sorry to cut you off. Is neurobiology sort of like what is it called?
Neurolinguistic programming.
Yeah.
Well, so neurolinguistic programming arises out of the neurobiology of human beings and how we work. And how I would characterize it, Beau, is I say to people, one of my most fundamental sayings is communicating with human beings is not logical. You may have noticed, right? Communicating with human beings is not logical, it's biological. And when you understand the biology of communication, it becomes you can be vastly more effective and understand why what you're doing is working and why what you're doing isn't working if it's not, right? So I'll give you a really core piece of my training if you want it.
Yeah, of course.
So, okay, there's lots of implications and we can't go into everything, but I'll give you something that'll be freaking totally useful for you for the rest of your life if you just take it on. So if we look at a human brain, a cross section of the human brain, what we'll see is the brain stem, and then wrapped around that is the midbrain. And together, these things form what's called the paleomammalian brain, the limbic system, or the emotional brain. 3 names for that same ancient piece, right? And now look, if somebody's listening and they're a deep neurobiologist, we could argue about this a little bit, but fundamentally, this is useful and it's true. And yes, there's more subtleties, but so what? This is really useful. So you got your paleomammalian brain. That's the ancient part, right? Paleomammalian. It's so old, it's been around so long that all mammals have this brain basic structure, right? And then wrapped around the outside of that is the neocortex or the cerebral cortex, right? And neo means what? New, right?
New.
Neo, right? So the neocortex, that's the new brain wrapped around the ancient paleomammalian brain. And here's why that's important, okay? Because the ancient paleomammalian brain does not have access to language or logic or reason. That's all in the cerebral cortex, the neocortex. However, the ancient paleomammalian brain, now this is weird, I'll say it twice. The ancient paleomammalian brain doesn't have access to language or logic or reason, but it does have access to reality on a much deeper level than we will ever have access consciously. That's weird, I'll say it again. It has, the ancient paleomammalian brain has access to reality on a fundamentally deeper level than we will ever have access consciously. And here's what I mean. That's the part of the brain that smells pheromones. And it sees these teeny little facial micro expressions that we make all the time, unconsciously, cannot control them, sending and receiving all kinds of messages that way, totally unconsciously. The ancient paleomammalian brain is seeing that stuff, reading that stuff, sending those signals. Same thing with a lot of the subtle body language, vocal tone, word choice, like even noticing patterns in things that we'll never notice consciously. That paleomammalian brain is seeing and noticing and perceiving all that. We'll never perceive it consciously, but the ancient brain that's perceiving that doesn't have language. So how does it communicate with us? Here's how. It communicates with us through gut feelings. That's where gut feelings come from, right? That's why your mom told you, and if she didn't, I'm telling you now, trust your gut. That's good information. It's your ancient paleomammalian brain perceiving things that you'll never perceive consciously. So here's the takeaway of that. Trust your gut. If the elevator door opens and the hair stands up on the back of your neck and you think I shouldn't get in there, don't get in there. Because number one, if it's a nice person, they'd want you to trust your gut. And number two, if it's not a nice person, we don't want you in there, right? And if the hair stands up on the back of your neck and you get this horrible feeling, that's something based in reality. Your body just smelled the pheromones of this really bad guy and said, don't do that, right? So that's cool, but I think a lot of us think that we are logical, right? Oh, John, well, I get it, but I'm going to weigh things out. I make logical choices. I weigh the decisions. I check the boxes. Well, You may do that, but even if you do that, if I took anyone who has a normal functioning human brain, even if they're super logical like that, put them in an fMRI machine and we watch their brain in real time, what we would see is that when they make that decision, boom, their paleo-mammalian ancient brain fires first, making the decision. And then right after that, nanoseconds later, the cerebral cortex fires, agreeing with or disagreeing with the decision, but not making the decision.
So this is, and let me give you an example. So I meet somebody and we're talking, and immediately, like sometimes I get like this gut feeling, like I don't believe this person. What they're saying, I could tell they're not being sincere.
Yes.
And that's my ancient brain saying this, whatever, subliminally, I'm taking in all this information, and it's like a processor that's processing an algorithm, and it's processing like, hey, this person is not trustworthy. And without even me thinking about it, I'm getting this reaction inside, and that's my ancient brain, basically.
Bingo. Absolutely. You saw their facial micro expressions, the things that they were sending you unconsciously, saying, I'm lying, I'm not being straight up with you. You smell their pheromones. All those signals are coming. And when you get that strong gut feeling that I don't trust them, look, how has it worked out when you did trust somebody that you knew you shouldn't, right? How'd that go? Not very well, right? So here, let me bring it all together for you. One more quick little bit.
Okay, yeah.
So you tell me if you've never had an experience like this. Do you like the product? Oh yeah, we like the product. Do you think it's priced right? Oh yeah, priced right. Mm-hmm. Do you think it would make a difference for you to have it? Oh, certainly yes. Well, do you want to sign the check and we'll start delivery? No, we're not ready yet. We want to think about it a little more. Like, okay, what just happened, right? You're out trying to raise millions for your company. You're at Accenture and you've got this multi-million-dollar deal you're trying to sell, and they say yes, no. Were they lying? What was up, right? No, here's what happened. Okay, it's super obvious. Like I said, in hindsight, yes, no. Logic, emotion. We didn't make an emotional connection. We didn't put their ancient paleo-mammalian brain at ease. We didn't get them in the same tribe with us. So logically, they're all in. Yes, it's a great product. It's priced right. It'd make a huge difference. I want it. No. And now look here at the physiology. The ancient brain is in the middle, and wrapped around the outside of that is the neocortex, cerebral cortex. So the logical brain has to go through the emotional brain to make it to the spinal column to send the signal to sign the check or say yes or take any kind of action. So if we don't make an emotional connection, all the logic in the world just bounces off. Yes, no. If we want yes, we've got to make an emotional connection.
Yeah, that's amazing. I was just at an event, and there was like this agency, and they did like marketing for you, and it was like a service I would pay for, and so I signed up to have like another meeting, later on, and
Yep.
And it was like, then they sent me like an invoice, like, hey, if you want to move forward, you can pay now, and I'm like, wait, I am not there yet, right? And like because they did that, I was immediately turned off. And my ancient brain just said no. I still went to the call. I said, well, I don't know enough information. But see, if they would have just done things differently, they would have probably had a much better chance of closing the sale with me.
Right.
And
I mean, imagine if they would have had somebody, even somebody that's pretty new, go look at your website, look a little bit what you did, tell you, we think what you're doing is really cool. We noticed this and this that are actually real things on your, that you're doing, and some sort of authentic connection with you. Like, one of the guys on the team's father is in real estate, and we think what you're doing is cool. And right. Oh, that would be totally different than here's an invoice.
Yeah, no, they totally. Now that we're talking about this, it's like these things are so important. I mean, it was a big ticket item too, and it's like they just dropped the ball. How many times did they drop the ball because their sales process and they didn't build rapport or the communication. And
Yes.
if they would have just done it differently, their success rate would probably be tripled or even quadrupled of what they're closing. I don't know what they're closing. They're successful, but I'm just saying, I don't like it. Once I get that bad gut feeling, the ancient brain, I am just like, so I guess the question then is there's a whole art to talk to the ancient brain on
Yes.
stage or wherever over Zoom, where you're building that connection without really building that connection. It's happening instincts are taking over, and you're like for example, we never met before we met on Zoom just now, and it was like we hit it off automatically. Like we communicated well,
Yep.
we built rapport, and I was already like, oh, John's a really cool guy.
Yeah, I told you already. I want to stay in touch with you
Yeah,
after,
because our ancient brains liked each other.
Boom. Right. And one of the things that comes up a lot, I'm jumping ahead a little bit in the thinking pattern that often happens. I feel like this ability to speak to the ancient brain, as you say, it's something that the dark side of the force has down, right? And the dark side of the force uses it to manipulate people. And that is not what I'm talking about, right? I do not help the dark side of the force. And the dark side of the force probably doesn't need my help. The light side of the force, though, doesn't seem to have this down as well. And one of the big keys is that it must be authentic, right? I look at it like this. The things that I really teach people that make a huge difference for them fall under the label, I think, of influence, right? And influence, as I use that term, means that it is deeply authentic and real. And it has to be. Otherwise, it becomes not influence, but manipulation. And manipulation is when it's inauthentic, it's selfish, and it leaves everybody feeling dirty and yucky. Genuine, authentic influence leaves people inspired and excited and genuinely connected. And I think because we see people do it wrong so much, or do it for the dark side so often, the light side shies away from it. But what you should shy away from is the inauthenticity and the manipulation. Don't shy away from the emotional connection, the authentic, real emotional connection, because that's what makes life worthwhile, right? And that's what forwards the action of the light side the best.
You're listening to the Investor Financing Podcast. We'll be right back after this break.
Hello, Beau here, host of the Investor Financing Podcast. Are you a lender, real estate professional, or vendor that provides products or services within the real estate investing and business owner space? We are offering a few sponsorship opportunities to get in front of a highly targeted audience. If you're interested, please click the link below for further information. We look forward to talking with you. Thanks. Make it a great day. We're talking high level right now, but like if you're out there watching this or now, or actually in the future when this is edited, just think about the small things we're doing in life that, like if you're a salesperson and you're making phone calls, how do you connect where they're not turned off right off the bat, right? Like as soon as I get a cold call, I'm turned off, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you break this is why communication is so important. How do we break these barriers down so like when you make that phone call, they don't feel like it's a sales call. It's just and so this is all, and now with the future, right? Like things are changing. People are doing video emails now to communicate. And so like you just think about all these. So anybody that's out there right now, like whether you're communicating with a motivated seller, right? And they're going to sell you their property at a discount. A lot of it comes down to them like, well, obviously they have a motivation of death, family, or whatever. They want to sell you. They don't want the house to be listed on the market. But really, if you can get and build that rapport with the seller, you're more likely for them to want to sell to you. And they might even know that they're taking a little bit of a haircut on the deal, but they end up liking you and you build rapport and they trust you. their ancient brain sees it. So now it's clear. I never really ever thought about it. So it's fascinating.
In my house that I'm sitting in right now, right? I'm not actually on the space station. This is a physical background because it's not so pretty looking out the window behind me. It looks under a deck. But we bought this house. It was at the absolute top of the range that we could afford. They had just come down, we were trying to get them to pay closing costs, and we put together an authentic, heartfelt letter to the seller. And we told the seller, look, we have a newborn. We love this neighborhood. I grew up just minutes from here. And we don't want to just buy this house and tear it down and turn it into a McMansion and resell it. We want to raise our family here. And we're serious about that. And I think that's what closed the deal.
That's awesome.
And it's true, right? But so many people wouldn't think that would matter maybe, or, wouldn't think to do that necessarily. But we wanted them to know, that was really true, and so we let them know. And I think it had an impact on us getting this deal done. That's
awesome. I hear that happening in previous conversations with people. They would, if you can convey a message, not everybody's out there to squeeze every last penny out of everything, right? There's actually people that are actually compassionate, and they're like, yeah, I could make 20 grand more, but that 20 grand more really isn't a game changer. I'd rather have this house go to somebody who's going to love the house and not just use it as a commodity. They're going to raise their family. So storytelling and communication is so important for all this, because it's not always, people always are fascinated, why somebody would sell $1 million house for $700,000. It's because they liked you. They didn't have a need for it. You'd never ask why, but I think there's just such an important factor here that if you actually can communicate your messages to people effectively, that you're going to get whatever you're seeking in life. And if you don't communicate, it's even like in a husband-wife situation. If I don't communicate very well with my wife, we're going to fight. And sometimes we fight for 2 or 3 days because we didn't communicate well. It's just just start breaking things down. And so I love this conversation. Where can we go? Where should somebody out there that's hey, this conversation with John and Beau is really good, and I see the importance of communication. I see the importance of leadership and how to be a more effective leader. Where should somebody go? I mean, we can go to your podcast. We start listening. Yep. Do we? What are the steps? Should we go and start going to Toastmasters? Where would you say to get our feet wet in the communication world?
So I'll start with just some things that I have that I go out of my way to make valuable, if that's okay, and then I can go a little more broad. First of all, if people want, I do a weekly mini training, and I would be happy to give that to any of your listeners for free if they just go to bit.ly/John Bates. And so that would get them every Sunday morning, an email from me with a free mini training, couple other emails once in a while. But that mini training, I go out of my way to make it valuable. And people tell me all the time I should be charging for this. I'll give it to them for free because I just want to make a difference. I want to scale here. And when people sign up for that, they will get 2 documents from me that I think are some of the most valuable documents I've ever created about finding what I call their superhero origin story. And as you heard from me, I shared my origin story at the beginning. I was deep in debt. I was in a bad place, realized I could do this, went to TED and then realized I could do this and just did it, right? And so when people hear that story about me getting over myself, being jealous of the hard skills people and realizing I actually had something to offer, that's important for people to know, right? And everybody's got an origin story, why you use your powers to do what you're doing. And when the people around you understand that, and when it has an emotional connection to it, that's just the most important tool I think you could ever have in your life. And I'll walk people through that with these 2 very short PDF documents that they'll get if they register for these mini trainings. And then I do a lot of stuff on LinkedIn, which is just /in/John Bates. So if people follow me there, I put a lot of great stuff out there. I try really hard to make that valuable. And then, Toastmasters is something that I think of Toastmasters like going to the gym for speakers, right? So if it's scary and you're not really comfortable and you need that, which I think everybody needs practice, right? Just where are you practicing? Toastmasters is a great place to go, and it's super available to anybody. It's not ultra complicated, and it really does make a difference, mostly because you're just showing up at the gym every day, right? So I think that's a really, really great thing to do. And then I'm trying to think of, I think if there's I have a book called Your Itty Bitty Guide to Being TED-Worthy. If you just go Itty Bitty TED-Worthy on Amazon, you can find it. And the great news is it'll take you maybe 30 minutes to read it, or 40 minutes at the most. And it's 15 Secrets of Neurobiology. If you want to read a longer book, I would recommend a book by a woman named Nancy Duarte called Resonate. So if you just want to read one book about this, besides my itty bitty book, which is not as in-depth as Resonate, read Nancy Duarte's Resonate. It's very, very good. And then, start doing it, and don't worry about doing it perfectly. Anything worth doing well is worth doing crappy for a while, right? Till you can get good.
That's great advice. I mean, I think just getting started, you gave us 4 or 5 different easy things that we can do to take action, just to move the needle forward, so we can work on our communication skills and be better leaders. And that's what I think a lot of us out there want to do. I know I personally want to do it. So it's
and Beau, here's my thinking about my weekly mini trainings. If you just take that one thing that comes out on Sunday, right, and you make a little yellow sticky that you put by your computer about what I talked about in that Sunday thing, and you just look at it all week, look at that yellow sticky by your monitor all week, and try to bring that one thing this week to everything you're doing, then I'll send you a new one next week. Bring that to everything you're doing. And every week, that one little thing, it's 3 minutes at the most, like 2-3 minutes, that will help you build a really excellent leadership communications habit. Because learning, to know and not to do is not to know. So to actually do something, one little teeny thing every week as a part of all the other things that you're doing, that I've watched people just build amazing, excellent habits by doing that. So that's what I'm thinking with that mini training. That's my way of collaborating with people who are willing to take this on over time and really want to get good.
That's awesome, and that's wonderful of you to offer that. To anybody that's listening, guys, it doesn't cost you anything except a little bit of your time, and it can improve your leadership and communication skills. It's kind of a no-brainer, because communication and leadership skills are the number one skill to have in this world. So, John, thank you so much. I really enjoyed the conversation. I learned a lot, and now I'm just thinking about the ancient brain. I'm not going to say the full name of it, because it's too much of a tongue twister. But every time I go up to somebody now, I'm thinking ancient brain.
Yeah. Well, and emotional brain is another good word for it. The emotional brain, which kind of brings home the point that you got to make that emotional connection. If you're talking to the emotional brain, you gotta make that emotional connection to free up the logic to work, right? Logic's necessary. It's not sufficient.
And then there's the whole other side of being, one thing is, being on stage and talking to like a TEDx platform, but also just interacting with people
everywhere.
And you have to have good active listening skills too.
Bingo.
So that's these are the communication, active listening. I volunteered as a mediator. I'll let us go here quickly, but I volunteered as a mediator. And a big thing about when we were mediating these small claims court cases was letting each other, both the plaintiff and the defendant, hear each other. Guys, like, just listen. And a lot of times it was really about one side being heard. And then they were okay, even if they felt they were still losing, because oftentimes everybody feels like they're getting the short end of the stick. But being heard. So like that's another huge thing too that I know is important, is communication. And to be a good communicator, you also need to be a very good listener, active listener. And so these are skills that we all need.
And I had a big realization around that, Beau, because when I almost died of that autoimmune disease, I promised the universe that if it let me live, I would only, like, my number one thing, instead of being all selfish and having it be about me, I promised my number one concern would be just to make a difference. Somehow, some way, I would keep that at the very top of my mind if I got to live. And I got to live. I was not okay for a while, but I'm back, and because I've kept my promise, every day has been gravy since then. And here's what I realized a little while ago. This is super embarrassing. I thought I was the big deal because I'm the speaker, right? I'm on stage. There's all these people in the audience. I'm the one talking, right? But here's what I realized that really brought me back to reality. The only way that I ever get to make a difference, ever, is through the generosity of your listening, right? If the audience isn't listening, I make zero difference, period. I could say the most brilliant things ever, goose egg, if they're not listening. And so that listening, I realized, is just the most important part of speaking. They're listening, and in order for you to be a great speaker and a great communicator, the number one most important thing is how well you listen. So the power of listening, absolutely.
Wow, this is powerful, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'm going to put links to what we talked about below in the show notes, so you can every Sunday get a nugget of information that you implement and just build on it. It's going to take you a few minutes a week to implement these things, and it's going to just improve. And not everybody watching this is going to take action, but guys, this is just like, it's there for you. So you might as well do it, because you don't often get people that are willing to give you nuggets every week for free. So while it's there, you might as well take some action and improve your communication skills. So I hope you enjoyed it. John, once again, thank you so much. This was an amazing episode. And all you real estate people and business owners out there, I hope you, even though we're not talking about real estate per se today, that you really understand the importance of bringing on different people on the show that are going to provide value. And I do it selfishly, so sorry if you guys don't like it as much as I do, but I do this stuff because it moves my needle. I get motivated, and I'm hoping that you guys felt John's energy the way I did, and he definitely made an impact in my life in this hour or 45 minutes we've been on. So I hope you guys felt impacted as well. And thanks again, John.
You're super welcome. My pleasure, and thank you too.